Christa, it's great to have you on the podcast. It's been a little while, and we finally got to meet each other on here and get to hear your journey. You share it with others. So thank you. And I just want to go back a little bit. We were connected through two individuals, and it was kind of funny how we got, crisscross. One came, and then the other one sent the same thing, probably not long after the other one. So I'd like to give a shout out to Sinette and Rainey for doing that. So I appreciate that. But anyways, I know you have an incredible story to share, and I would like you just to start opening up with, who you are and, what you're doing today. And we'll just go back into your journey and to get to where you are today.
Sounds fantastic. So first of all, thank you, John, for having me on, and for your listeners as well. So my name is Christa. I'm from Ontario, Canada, and I fulfilled my dream of writing Amazon #1 best-selling book, Skip the Pain, Experience the Pleasure. And I inspire you to cut the crap that's holding you back so you can live the life you love. I'm an international speaker, a certified coach practitioner. I use different modalities like Reiki, intuitive readings, and Akashic records so I can help you find clarity to experience laughter and joy and fun in life again, especially when life gets so hard and difficult and you start spiraling into that depression. So that's a little bit about what I do and how I learned about that and really how I got to this point was looking back, in our childhood. The first thing I remember is that it was a mistake. Now that might seem like, how can you be a mistake? You're a cute little baby. And what I did is I overheard my mom with a bunch of people, and they were talking about, it's not real that when you're nursing a baby, you can't get pregnant. See, it's a mistake. Me and my brother are only a couple months apart. So my brother was just a little baby, and I definitely wasn't planned. But what did I hear? You're a mistake. And if you're a mistake, that means you have to be perfect. You have to correct yourself. I was also born with only 10% hearing. So I had a really bad speech impediment, and they thought I was just quiet. So I took speech language therapy classes all throughout school until I got to grade 8. Till one of the cool girls saw me with this book and made fun of me, and that was it. I thought, no, I'm done. That's it. I'm not going to try. So on my own, I started practicing how to talk, and I was really trying to hide being seen, doing presentations. Anything like this would have been a nightmare for me. So I continued on and went to school. I became a nutritionist, and I got an amazing job at a hospital. I remember it was the first day of spring, and usually we don't get snow then, but we happened to have a really big snowstorm that day. And I remember driving home, and suddenly my car starts slipping on a sheet of ice. And then I remember it spiraling down and spiraling and then slamming into a bunch of snow. And I thought, okay, thank God. It's funny who we thank at those times. And then I saw the lights. The lights kept getting bigger and brighter and closer. Yes, it was a full-size pickup truck coming directly head on towards me. And they hit me head on. I was driving a small car, and they had to get me out from the back. I ended up going to the hospital and really had to work on getting better, but I became so depressed because I felt like I was a burden. I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. I couldn't give my son a bath. So I started spiraling into a depression. This depression ended up having me doing anything to numb the pain. And when I say anything, it also meant overdoing. So I wasn't able to do a lot of things, but I would do them anyway. So I would over clean, the house because I always wanted to prove that I was worthy. I would try to make these amazing meals, again, to prove that I was a good enough wife, a good enough mother. So 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day later, I held my husband as he passed away in my arms. We only knew for 2 weeks. He had a aggressive form of leukemia. We had no time to prepare. I mean, really, who has time to prepare? But this took us completely by shock. And it's funny because when the doctor came in, he said, "This is the saddest news I've ever had to give a young couple," and told us the diagnosis, and that, we're going to try to fight it with chemo. But we asked for 1 day. We have 1 day at home. So he said, against his advice, we did go home, and we went through everything. He paid the bills. I didn't know a lot of passcodes and all that kind of stuff that he took care of. I had to keep my emotions in check. And then all of a sudden, he looked at me and gave me the greatest gift of all. And I just want, please, everyone, listen to this. He said, "If something happens to me, if I don't make this, Christa, I want you to get married. I want you to get remarried. I want you to carry on." And of course, I'm thinking, no, I'll never do that. You're going to fight this. You're going to get better. Of course. And the pain that was inside me of him even thinking about that. But then he turned it around and said, "Remember so many years ago in your car accident, you were this close to death. And if you would have died, would you want me to be single for the rest of my life? Or would you have wanted me to get remarried?" I thought about that. And, we had a little boy. And I said, as long as she wasn't prettier than me. Just kidding. So it actually provided that laugh that we needed so desperately. And I will say that was the biggest gift I've ever received, because 7 years later, I did meet my best friend, and I did get remarried, and I have 2 more children from that, which I'm so deeply grateful. From there, I continued to work, and I started moving up the ladder, as they would say. So I became the director. I opened many businesses, many long-term care homes, hospitals, and really, again, going right back to the beginning of wanting to prove myself, wanting to prove that I was worthy, until I swear the universe said, enough. And I started having all these strange symptoms. Out of nowhere, I had a seizure. I mean, literally nowhere. I started seeing hallucinations. And yes, I thought I was going crazy. I went to my psychiatrist, and I diagnosed myself with about everything. He's like, "No, Christa, you don't have that. No, Christa, you don't have that." I'm like, "No, are you sure? Because I'm really going crazy." So more and more things started happening, and I started losing the ability to walk, and my muscles were spasming. I was losing the ability to talk. I was not remembering how to even move my jaw. And I ended up becoming in a catatonic state. It's kind of like a coma. And I could hear what people were saying, but I couldn't respond. The only movement I could do was something like this. Now, it took a little while, but my earth angel, my neurologist, the top neurologist, happened to send my blood work to Spain, and they test for rare diseases. And that's when they found out I have this rare disease called anti-gad 65. At that point, they were able to treat it with something called IVIG, and I did that for 3 years. I also used my own nutritional background and used many remedies. Like one time my doctor said, and this is actually recently, my doctor said, "We need to double your medicine because your levels are going up a little bit." And I thought, how about I double my magnesium? She looked at me and said, "That's a fantastic idea." So I did that, and you know what? See, it worked. I just want to point out one thing. I was given 4 years to live. This is my 6th year. back then, 4 years ago, I was walking with a walker. I finally moved up to a cane. I had to, again, use speech therapists to help me learn how to speak. And, I asked my best friend, truly, how am I doing? Because your, family and, my husband kept saying, you're doing great, you're doing great. But I really wanted the honesty. And she said, you're missing about every third or fourth word. So I had to learn how to control what I was saying in my mind and how to make it come out my mouth. Sometimes that was good. And sometimes you have to be careful what you think and say. So from doing this, it's really ironic because if I think about it, when I was younger, I had to learn how to speak. And then several years later, not too long ago, I had to learn how to speak again. And here I am spreading my message, and I'm an international speaker.
That's a lot. You've definitely been through a lot, and I appreciate you sharing everything that you shared so far. So, if you went all the way back to where you started and you felt like you were a mistake, do you feel that now?
One thing that does come and go is I challenge myself not to be a perfectionist. So because I felt like a mistake, I felt like I had to be perfect. And that did become a habit. And literally, when you have this habit, it's hard to get out of that habit. So I do catch myself if I see pillows on the ground or I see dishes in the sink. I used to think, oh my goodness, people are going to think I'm a slob. Now I stop myself. I actually have these weird acronyms. So one of the acronyms is WAIT, and it literally stands for what am I thinking? So when I start getting those thoughts that bring my emotions down, I stop myself and check, what am I thinking? And is it serving me? And then I say, what do I want to think instead? And I know it sounds easy, but it really isn't. It's a muscle that you grow and grow, and you get better and better at it. I also learned to use the same acronym to stand for, why am I talking? Because you ever notice a group of people get together, and what's the first thing they do? They start complaining. Oh my goodness, someone stole my alien teenager, or my mother's on my case, or now I have to take care of my parents. The weather's so bad, someone cut me off. It's this vicious cycle, and it's like a comparison of who has it crappiest. And then we also start bonding over gossiping. Like, you know what I heard John Emery do on his podcast? No, I don't talk about you behind your back.
Sorry.
But that's one of the things that we as a society we do. So one thing I did learn to do is to literally say, wait, why am I talking? Making sure I'm talking out of respect and kindness and not giving in to any negativity.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that out there, a lot of negativity. And I know you're speaking and stuff, and I'm sure you're surrounded by a lot of people that are very positive, and I would imagine some people come in and are negative, looking for that positive shift. And you sharing your story, with others gives them that hope, that guidance that, they can move on, and get away from where they're at, because I would say a lot of people probably think they're a mistake in a way, you know what I mean? Or they're not living up to other people's potential, and your potential is the best potential, and you can keep on growing from there. You don't have to be somebody else's, right?
It's so true. I know for me, I kept thinking that my worth was my name badge. So my identity became whatever job I did, not who I was as a person, not if it was loving, compassionate, non-judgmental. None of those qualities seemed to, I seem to care about. When I wasn't able to work because of this disease and a few other things at that, type of job, again, that's when I started spiraling down again. So it's not like a a quick fix. You constantly have to watch yourself. And I found looking at how we use our mindset is pretty well one of the things that shifted my whole entire world. Because from the moment we wake up to the second we lay our head down at night, everything in between is about us. You think about that, we create our own reality. And the more and more I kept telling myself that, I started looking at my goals. I actually started getting up a little bit earlier and focusing on my goals first, not the dishes in the sink. It was almost, killing me to clean those dishes or put the pillows back on the couch. But no, I had to start looking at my goals. And that was even one of them was writing a book. And it wasn't writing the book that I ended up doing. It was finishing the book. And that's because I changed my mindset to what I wanted instead of what I didn't want.
How did you set yourself up to do that book? Did you spend 15 minutes a day? Did you write a sentence a day? What was that like?
Well, I'll go back a little bit about how I even started writing this book. So about, I'll say in my first 25 years, somebody else wrote part of my story in their book. So we co-authored it. And I thought that was fine. It wasn't until life kept happening. And like I said, after my husband passed away, there's a bunch of things that, went on. And I had to keep challenging myself to get strong. And then as well as dealing with my disease. So someone said, you need to write a book. This someone was someone I saw at a dog park. One day I was, again, getting a little sorry for myself sitting on the couch. And my husband says, come on, let's take Hope, which is my dog, to the dog park. She's actually my service dog. So because it was about her, I said, okay, let's go. If he would have said, let's go for a walk, no, maybe I'm too tired. So sure enough, here I go for a walk. And all of a sudden I hear, Christa? I turn around, I see this beautiful lady. I almost didn't recognize her because she didn't have any hair. She was my friend. Her name is Jen. And I knew she had cancer, but I didn't realize it came back. So we sat there for, it seemed like eternity. And she said, Christa, I heard what you've been going through. I've heard about your sickness and your illness. I heard about your depression. I heard about you spiraling down. I've also been watching how you've been such an inspiration and keep moving up. What's this like? And I said, it's being authentic, really, being honest. I feel like a burden sometimes. And she says, I do too. And that was like opening the floodways of all her emotions, just holding space and letting her talk. At the end of it, we started changing the way we talked. And she said, you know what? I haven't had this much relief and this much fun in so long. Instead of looking at what I can't do, I'm actually going to make a plan for what I'm going to do tomorrow. So she's the one who said, you really should write a book. And I said, a few people have said that before. And she said, I'm sure this is a quote that she's heard, but your life could be someone else's roadmap. So your journey can be something that someone else can be inspired by. That really got me thinking. So when I got back into my car and started driving away, I thought that was my purpose today. Our purpose doesn't have to be something big that we created something. Our purpose can be something small, something that like we stopped when a dog darted in front of us. We held the door for an elderly couple. It could be the small things. So as I started having that inspiration and writing a book, I literally started to take a pen and paper, yes, a little bit old-fashioned, and I just started jotting down some ideas. That ended up going on a computer and ended up with a book. I was with a publisher, and it was about a 365-page book, and it was depressing. I was depressed and I didn't even need any help because it was all about bringing up all that, the horrible things that I went through, the traumas, the abuse, there's so much, but you know what? We all have it. Pain is pain. So I said, no, I can't do this. So I ended up scrapping that and thinking, what do I need? And when I was going through all my stuff, I couldn't find anything that was light and uplifting. Everything I read at the end was always depressing. And I thought, no, I'm going to write a book and leave somebody with inspiration and with hope. So that's exactly what I did. So my book, which I happen to have right here, is a short, really easy read. I do talk about how I overcame my obstacles, not focusing so much on those obstacles, but I give you the tools that I personally use, so I know they work, to carry on and keep going instead of falling. So again, paper and pen, I started writing out little parts of things that I wanted people to know instead of focusing on all the tragedies. So basically I started with, what's the messages I want to give people? What do I want to let people know how I got through all these tragedies? And then I went backwards and I kind of matched some up with the obstacles. A few of them I shared with you, and I had a lot of humor along the way. I had to get approved by my mom. So it is a little bit bigger font, and the humor is, and this is clean, one of the chapters is called The G Spot. Of course, gratitude is the first thing you thought of, right?
Absolutely.
So, exactly. So I do have some innuendos and some things like that, but it's to keep you engaged. And I've had so many people come to me recently, and this really surprised me, I'm going to be honest. This man came up and said, I want to shake your hand. Are you Christa who wrote Skip the Pain, Experience the Pleasure? I said, yeah. He says, my wife gave me this book, and I haven't read a book since I was in high school. And even back then, I read Cole's Notes books, if you even know what they are. So the only time he read was when he wanted to go to sleep. So one day, sure enough, he couldn't sleep, and his wife said, here you go. Here's a book you can read. So he said, I started reading it, and he says, from the very first page, I was hooked, and I kept reading until midnight, and he thought, oh my goodness, I gotta get up in the morning. So he put it down. And the next day, he came home, and instead of relaxing and turning on the news and listening to all that negative stuff, he thought back to some of the messages I say in my book, and he picked it back up and kept reading. And it was only the next day that he had a little more time, and he finished it. So it was a really quick, easy read. And he actually said it changed my life. I think that's one of the biggest compliments. I only wanted to inspire somebody. And I really asked him how. And he said, it changed the way I saw how I live, how I show up in the world, and really the messages I give people every day. And how do I want to create my legacy? How do I want to live the life I love instead of having it like Groundhog Day every day?
Yeah, that's awesome. And, even if it was just to hit that one person, it's well worth it. All right. I'm sure it's hit more than that. You just don't hear about it, I thank you for sharing that with how you started writing your book and everything. And going back to your friend that you met at the park, how important do you think it is for authenticity in this day of age? And, people are, at least where I'm going, the direction I'm headed, people are being more open. But there's a lot of people that shut down and they don't say nothing because they're afraid of what other people think. So the question is, how important do you think it is?
I think being authentic is something that I really did struggle with because I feared judgment. And I think that's why people hold back. I know for me, I wore a mask a lot and kept saying, I'm fine. I would have these muscle spasms. kind of like a Charlie horse, if you know what they are. Basically your muscle spasms, but it happened all over my body. And people would look at me and literally they could see the pain in my face and say, "Are you okay?" And I'd be like, "I'm fine." And it wasn't until I started opening up and saying, "You know what? I'm not fine." And it went not only physically, but emotionally. And when we start having real conversations with people, not just about the weather. I mean, it's okay to talk about the weather as well, but to really have those soulful conversations like I did with my friend and become authentic, it gave her permission to become authentic herself. And that's something that we forget. We think that if we post those perfect Facebook pictures of our family all perfectly posed, our hair all perfectly done, our dog looking straight at the camera, knowing truly it took probably 50 takes to get that one picture. What happens is we start feeling down and we start comparing ourselves. And then we strive harder and harder to become someone we're not. So yes, being authentic is so important. And through the exercise of writing my book, through the exercises of doing speaking and working with people, is the more and more I've found how to become authentic myself, like being very vulnerable and doing this, being seen, and really becoming authentic.
Yeah. And it's, you're around those people when you're opening up, you'll attract those people, right? The ones that want to listen and want to dive in more and share their life, and you can share yours. So I'm saying this because I came back from an event not too long ago, and it was nothing but people just sharing their journey in life. And that's basically what it was. It was on stage and off stage, and it was amazing. So you don't find that. You don't find that when you're going to work for somebody else. You're just there to do the job. Nobody wants to open up to you. Everybody's got their problems, but they just shut it down. And then they're stuck in that state of depression and not know what to do, how to handle it, etc. Right? So how can somebody reach out to you, Christa, to find out first we can look for your book, where you get that from, and then, any kind of service that you have to offer, or, any speaking engagements you have coming up?
Yeah, so you can find my book anywhere. Skip the Pain, Experience the Pleasure by Christa Rose, and Christa spelled, as my mom would say, Christ with an A, Rose. And it's on Barnes & Noble, Indigo, basically any store. Just look up it online. You can also go to my website. That is being redone right now, and it's christarose.com. And that's where I talk about some events coming up, or if I'm doing any type of group work. I definitely talk about some topics I speak about, but I'm very open to speaking really about anything. I have spoken about to corporate people on corporate stages, and next thing you know, by the end of it, they're in tears and they're looking at the person beside them and saying, "I have worked with you for 25 years and I never knew that about you." And I've also spoken at nonprofit organizations, and at the end, people who were in a state of depression because they were losing hope were inspired and started feeling, more uplifted. And that is what is my true blessing. So yeah, so christarose.com. You can also send me an email, and yes, I do actually answer them. Someone said, "Do you really answer them?" Yes, I do. It's messagechrista@gmail.com.
Great. Thank you. So I'm curious to know, with my last question I have for you is, what are 3 key things you've learned and used along your journey?
I think the first thing is my mindset. Checking what I'm thinking and focusing on all the time. If I'm focusing on something negative, I'm going to feel that. So looking and waiting, saying, what am I thinking? And what do I want to think instead? That's something that has literally changed my life. Something else I will say is my spiritual side. I really got connected with my higher power my God, my people can say the universe. It doesn't really matter what the word is. For me, it was connect with a higher being to help me become more authentic and to help heal myself. And I think the third one is it's okay to give up hope. And I know, as corny as that sounds, it stands for heck over pleasing everyone, because all I want to do is please everyone. And it's also an acronym for hold on, pain ends.
Nice. Yeah. So put yourself first, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And with the faith, a lot of people I've been talking to have been saying faith is a big thing. And, you know, it is uplifting in a way. You kind of like relieve yourself of some stress and everything. And, you know, not everything's in somebody else's hands, but you throw it out there, right? And
yeah, we can't control everything.
No, absolutely not. Christa, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey. It's an incredible journey, and maybe we could dive into something sometime down the road if we want to go deeper in an area. But I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been truly an honor. And thank you again to your listeners for spending the time with us.